figured I want to talk about this device I'm using to record my shit. This is a phone, I say in air quotes. Anybody who is familiar with Straight Talk Wireless, the service, which is actually pretty decent. At the beginning of me getting on Straight Talk, one of the features that I was kind of sold on was the 4G internet and being able to use the device as a mobile hotspot so I can use my desktop and stuff, which would be obviously to me more convenient. But so that was the reason why I went with the in-house Straight Talk phone that Walmart offers. I guess in this world, we're all kind of spoiled by the conveniences of technology and the internet these days and the speed and whatever. But this phone is a hunk of shit. To be completely honest with anybody, I'm not going to give you a detailed review really, but I'll just tell you that nothing really functions well on this phone. And I guess the best the assumption I can give you as to why is probably these are refurbs of, various really cheap ass parts. So now I've come to understand why people do spend a little bit extra money on, their Apple products or their, Android products. For the longest time, I used to think that smartphones were only regulated to the Apple brand, which might show you how powerful the Apple brand was at a particular period of time. Yes, this phone sucks. If anyone's by any chance listening to this and thinking about having a downgrade for, financial reasons or whatever, do everything you can and avoid buying these phones. These are absolutely the most frustrating pieces of shit I can imagine fucking with. It's like, I don't know, man. I just watched a video of this guy trying to live in the early 2000s for a week and he couldn't do it. Like, he had an old Dell laptop and he had a CRTV and all this stuff, and he cut himself off social media and all that. And it was an interesting little bit of analysis there. If you take a look at it, if I can find a link, I don't know. But anyway, this phone is really just a burner phone. So, of course, a burner phone is a reference to phones that drug dealers and criminals buy to use for a few times and then throw it away. It's just a temporary, tool. And so, I'm surprised that sometimes this thing turns on. My phone is really I tell you what my phone's really good at. Outside of, honestly, the sound recorder is the only useful thing on this thing. But if you want your USB charger cable to be fucked up, use one of these phones. If you're into that. If you're into, destroying stuff. This phone, for some reason, just barely manages to do basic shit. The touchscreen function, I have to constantly, I use a microfiber, I don't want to say rag, but just a cloth to keep this thing clean, because it is so all over the fucking place. And I've tried to recalibrating it and all that crap. It does no good. So Straight Talk wireless in-house phones from Walmart are garbage. Service is great in itself, but if you got a Galaxy or an Android or a Android style phone or whatever, or a Apple phone, iPhone, just, avoid this shit. Just avoid buying these phones. I'm sure anyone who's listening to this that's had one or currently has one could probably, say the same thing without breaking a sweat. Probably can wake them out of a cold, deep sleep. Oh yeah, those phones are terrible. But yeah, fuck these phones. On this seemingly stormy Memorial Day, I want to make a few points also on this acceptance thing. Now, just because I have an understanding and acceptance of what otherwise would be negative aspects of our society, does not mean by any stretch that it's compliance. Now, that's a whole different fucking thing. The complicit nature of stuff. Just because I understand why there is a huge fucking drug problem, not only in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky, and it's in the United States and possibly well into the third world and all that stuff. And just because I understand anything, but it is a path to getting things to a real progressive point. And that's a thing that you have to understand on like a relationship level, whether it's your best friend or your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. If you have no understanding whatsoever, and you go in it with some form of ignorance or implicit nihilism or whatever the fuck, it's doomed to fail. Because surprises, again, I talked about this before, surprises are something that are just not fun as an adult, period. Very rarely, because the only kind of surprises that are very positive is something financial. And the shit I'm saying about holidays is this. We live in a system where they have monetized every single fucking movement you make and think about. And that there is a problem. That material possession and material in pretty much all aspects is associated with who you truly are. And we all know that's a lie. That's bullshit. That material has to be obtained through the use of money in order to gain acceptance from your, people that you otherwise are indifferent to and don't understand. And this has been going on for, for as long as you can possibly think. And I think that at this point, at 2018, y'all, do you really think that we should keep doing this bullshit? That we should keep encouraging this cycle? Because look, at the end of the day, I mentioned this in several podcasts. Where do you think all this is going to end up heading? How do you expect this to end? I'm sure there's spoiler alerts that people have put up, to give their point of view in an essay form or whatever the fuck, and to let you know. I don't know how it could end, but I'll tell you this: it's going to end in stuff that we have no control over, and that's the kind of surprise. Oh shit, we didn't know that was going to happen. So, again, life doesn't give a shit about your plans. So this right here is at a baseline level should be something you need to wake up with every fucking day. Life does not give a shit about your plans. The universe does not give a shit about your plans. And if you're a religious person, it's God's will, and therefore he doesn't give a shit about your plans either. So there's no escaping that, and there's nothing you can do to augment that. And I think that for a lot of people with built-in depression and anxiety, that validates their reasons for drug use, because it does give them the illusion of control and the illusion of patterns working out for them in the future, and it does. And it's a feeling, and it's a stepping stone. But the more time anyone has to think about it, you realize that monetization has thoroughly fucked us up. I mean, there's no other conclusion. I mean, really, it has. It gives us this false sense, much like anything. We keep fucking with ourselves. And, of course, a lot of stuff is self-inflicted, especially when people get in toxic relationships that are based solely on a physical release. And obviously, it should be obvious, but it's not. That's fucking horrible, because through that physical reliance comes sex. Sex produces children, and then you have these children that are just unintentionally burdened, or unintentionally burdens to the situation. So, again, like I mentioned before, people shouldn't try to have children to relive either their childlike innocence or whatever, or to fix their problems, because really that's really fucking bold shit right there. That's a deep, weird psychological thing, again, that I can't really wrap my head around. So The theme of this podcast, or at least the series of whatever, is about grief. And the first stage of grief is denial. Denial, okay, I'll put it this way. Cognitive dissonance is another word for denial. Cognitive dissonance is the refusal to accept the true nature of something despite the obvious evidence that you see. And, and in that becomes... Well, it's a form of mental illness after a while. When you use denial in a lot of aspects of your life, it starts to, again, incrementally over time, it starts to fuck with you. And, that also contributes to psychological breakdowns or midlife crisis. Is basically, you can look at cognitive dissonance / denial as part of that. And there's so many things. Like, again, it's interesting in the 5 stages of grief that it starts with denial and ends with acceptance. But there's 4 stages in between denial and the acceptance, even though, it shouldn't be that way. But that just shows you how it is. Humans are so complex, and we do engage ourselves in complex situations. We're multitasking creatures. You can say that we're jacks of many trades, masters of none, and the masters out there, men become envious of, and we want to kill them for some reason because it's just weird fucking alpha male, alpha ape dog shit. So I understand that being a problem. I want what you have, so I'll do whatever it takes to get it. And some people are willing to cross lines you never knew were there in the first place. You always have to be prepared for that shit. So that's, again, plans and patterns. So, yeah. Now, the first stage, of course, back on this denial thing, you have your subcategories of elements here, like avoidance, confusion, elation, shock, and fear. I was talking about how you can physically wake somebody up and they're angry. I think this applies to intellectual matters and other things that are going on in the world. When you wake somebody up to something that is like, oh my God, because the first thought is everything I know is wrong, and that generates anger. But before that, you're like, no, I'm not even going to touch that. The avoidance, the thing of the hear no evil, see no evil. If I don't see it, then it's not a thing. That's a very tricky one, and it's a very devastating one. Especially when it gets into the confusion stage, because it's like when you know somebody your entire life, and it turns out that person you knew your entire life was a serial killer or something awful of that nature. And you try to piece it all together quickly, and you can't. It almost takes another lifetime to piece that together. So you avoid that. But when subtly, over a period of time, any kind of time frame, you start to see stuff, and you're just kind of confused by it. You're like, well, why? Why would he do that, or he or she do that? And that shit is discombobulating. It is confusing. And of course, shock should be up there at first, in first place. That's a complex element too. Just shock, like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? Why did that happen? Now, again, the reason why I'm bringing up these stages of grief in the first place is how applicable it is to all sorts of shit in your life. And of course, when you lose somebody you care about, it's the most devastating. But I'm just saying that if you think about it, various stages of grief are scattered all throughout other things we do, whether it's our home life, relationships, work, hobbies, all that stuff. And then you go into fear, which the fear and anxiety definitely are occupying the same, kind of space, but it's not quite like hatred or whatever. But yeah, the shock, the fear, these things, I think the difference is when it comes to other situations. I think it obviously when it comes to losing somebody, it's less internalized. It's very external, and it's fine and socially acceptable for that to happen. but when it comes to other things in your life, it's internalized, and especially like with men, again, or just anybody who has a shot of testosterone up in their system, that becomes very dangerous shit when it's internalized after a while, like I mentioned a while before with anger. So yeah, denial is definitely. Actually, I think that the denial sticks with you the longest, I think, which is just how it is. So on this magical road trip of emotional misunderstandings here, aka just grief, we're using the Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief. The second stage is anger, which also incorporates frustration, irritation, and anxiety. Boy, howdy, is this motherfucker a tricky one. Now, anger is a very interesting and complex emotion because anger really, if you think about it, gets things done. Whether or not the things being done in these situations is positive or negative is all relative to perception. But anger, now the thing is, where does the anger go? Now, given the model of, let's say, self-sabotage, which I mentioned that multi-billion dollar companies who monetize your escapism abilities have fucked up with, the anger is generally towards yourself. From a lot of people, I think at first it is yourself. When you lose something or lose somebody or whatever the case, the first thing is like, what did I do to deserve that? And, you know, in a lot of cases, it's absolutely jack fucking shit that you did. Nothing. And then some people are like, well, maybe I should have done something. But anger is the motivator. Now, actually, when it comes to the state of society or things like that, it does start with the individual. And that individual self-hatred, shouldn't be self-sabotage. But this anger, anger is so important, especially for men. Now here's where men fuck up, and obviously they harbor the anger for many, many years, and something happens, and bam, they are a psychopath. They are the Hulk. And, shit gets fucking destroyed, or people get destroyed. But anger, oh yes, I feel like we need more anger, and it needs to be less directed at yourself. Now, I'm just saying, you can give yourself a good self-analysis, but nowadays, the reason why shit is kind of awful for a lot of people, outside of just self-sabotage, is the fact that we aren't directing our anger towards external shit. Letting people run over yourselves, letting people run over you, and letting people take advantage of you, letting people see your kindness as weakness. The people who see your intelligence as a threat, people who see your confidence, your shine, your swag as a motherfucking negative, as a threat. Those are the people you need to direct your anger to, but you got to be articulate. And that's hard to do in a world like this because it takes a lot of courage. So anger is a complex issue, but for this argument or for this tirade, it basically boils down to a lot of self-hatred and anger. So we have to understand where that's at, because for the most part, we're in a very complacent, docile stage of existence, and that's why things are so awful. Of course, one of the obvious things that should go without saying during the anger stage is you don't want to resort to murder or just violence. You don't want to come up on the offense so quickly. You have to wait. You have to understand what you have to think as clearly as possible. And I think that is the most Obviously, that's the stuff the Buddhist monks teach you to do, the meditation and all that stuff. And, you know, that's what I find interesting, that something like marijuana or things in that ilk are just... man, I can remember hearing a story, okay, about a bootlegger. This bootlegger pretty much opened up shop, went without fail for longest time in a small... I'm going to say somewhere towards South Carrollton, okay? No names. And this had to be probably during the late 70s, early 80s. Anyway, the dude would... he kind of had a squad of people that would watch to make sure the rowdy drunks weren't too obvious, and that therefore, you know, where'd you get the booze, you know? There was a time when one of his friends got a little fucked up, and he was out there just running up and down the road, wanting to beat this dude's ass, just wanting to tear his ass up. And so bootlegger in question was like, "Hey, you need to chill out." You know, when he found out that was, you know, it's like, "Oh shit, that's one of my close comrades. I need to." So he picks him up by his hand, by his arm, and drags him over to the porch and sets him down on the swing for a little bit. And he's like, "So what the hell's wrong with you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat the hell out of that motherfucker, blah blah blah." And he's like, "Here," and he pulls the joint out of his pocket and he makes him smoke the joint. And within, I don't know, 2 or 3 hits, this guy is already just like reconsidering himself. He's like, why was I doing that? You know, well, you know, I could have went to jail. You know, what the hell? You know, he's still kind of drunk, but you know, he's crunk at this point. Is what they say. That's what the kids say. He was crunk, and because of that little 2 or 3 hits of whatever the fuck that was, to be specific, pot in this case, some form of pot, he reconsidered his shit. He thought about it. And that prevented not only the dude getting in trouble, it provided comfort to the bootlegger in question that, you know, he would be outed. So take that as you will, you know. And also there's times where I don't know what it takes or what happens while people are sleeping, but man, a lot of us can wake up with a fucking, on a warpath, and you don't really know why you're easily so irritated. Like, you can hear a fly in the corner and you're like, "Argh!" or just every sound, it's like you don't get it. Like, you wake up a little sore for some reason, you're like, "Wait a minute, hey, I thought I slept well, why am I grouchy?" 9 times out of 10, there's people I know that could be considered angels, but if you wake them up while they're sleeping, forget that shit. They're Wolverine. I mean, the damn claws are coming out. You know, there was one time, this is back when I was in SSD. We were staying at a motel, and we had a show coming up, and we had to go practice. And Jared Willoughby was out cold. Now, this guy doesn't generally sleep, but when he does, at that particular time, he was a brick. Like, a brick that no one can touch. We could blast like Van Halen or something, it wouldn't touch. But we had to get him up. Jason Burnett, the drummer at the time, took a bucket of fucking cold water. And I think it's like an ice bucket. He emptied the ice out, just put some water in it. And then he slowly just dripped it on his face. And Jared just shot up ready to fucking drop bows. And this is a guy that never does shit like that. Casey can attest to this stuff too. Casey can attest to what it's like to when he wakes up. So anyway, there's certain things that, you know, that are undetectable in this life that will make you fucking grouchy in the morning, or if you didn't sleep, or if you overslept. And that shit happens to me all the fucking time. And usually before I get on and do the podcast or videos and stuff, I'm already I'll sort it out. but a few times I don't, and I'm sorry. That just happens, but that's part of it. But yeah, this anger thing, it does bleed into anxiety, and yeah, that, of course, the anxiety thing is rough. Don't even get me started. That anxiety has ruled my life since I was old enough to understand what that was, or I don't know why. And then, again, this is genetic. I think a lot of it is genetic and conditional. Now, this brings us to the third stage of grief, which is a whopper. It's a triple whopper, which is depression, with the sub-elements of overwhelmed, helplessness, hostility, and flight, actually. Of course, the hostility could easily transport into the anger. But this one is probably the most important one of all time. As any statistician or any Google search will allude to, we're probably at the most depressed we've ever been, at least as far as we know. And there isn't a person that I know that is not suffering to some degree or dealing with depression. This is a slippery slope, because you get into the SSRIs, the antidepressants, and all that stuff. And it's a tricky one, because I personally have a scattered opinion about some of that stuff, and I don't know if it helps. But like I said, and I've mentioned before, a lot of it has to do with communication, with your therapist or your, the psychoanalyst, or whatever the case may be, psychologist. This one, along with denial, I think it lasts your entire life. There's just because it's such a deep-rooted, hardcore thing. For me, anxiety and forms of depression have ruled my life, and it has ruled many other people's lives. And quite obviously, this might actually go back to the denial stage. A lot of people are kind of in denial that everyone's depressed about something, and some people are genetically wired to be. Then I think that's where the SSRIs come into play, and I think some of them are very applicable to that, because no matter what, your dopamine and all that stuff, your chemicals just aren't balanced. And there's a lot of things that contribute to depression. And I think my personal belief is, our diets and the things that are in our fucking water, it's in our everything see, the problem with the arguments that, there's no proof that these things do that. Well, I think it does, because it's incremental. You're not going to drink a glass of water and eat a steak and immediately feel like shit or psychologically impaired. It's incremental. It's over a period of time that this thing builds up. So I do think diet has a lot to do with it, and atmosphere and all that stuff. And also, given the present state of how we communicate with each other, or lack thereof, and there's that feeling of isolation already built into our social fabric, that creates even more depression and fear and all that stuff. So yes, I think that's why the depression has lasted as long as it does in this period here. And I think there's so many ways. Instinctively, we try to medicate ourselves. That's where the drug problem comes in. And unfortunately, a lot of young people are just really gravitating towards hard shit, because they want it over. They want it to stop. So they end up inadvertently, and in some cases on purpose, comatose and zonked out, zombified. Even if they were to hang out and try to communicate and get out of the isolation, it's almost a moot point, because of the feeling of what's going on, because of the medication. Whether it's self-medicated or prescribed to you, there's still an issue there. And there's no real way to solve those problems. And see, for me, I used music, and I've used goofing off as a mechanism. Some people are really good at it. And of course, the saying goes, behind every comedian is a tragedy, and that's true. And I think behind all these really good singers and musicians is tragedy. There's tragedy. It's a balance of tragedy and hope. And the depression, I think, is number one. I personally think people need to laugh more about stuff. I always look at things through the lens of a comedian and what they do. And I'm not saying like clowns and stuff like that, which, there was a period of time where it worked. But I am a fan of pies in the face and unicycles. They're pretty fucking ridiculous. But yeah, and big clown noses. But yeah, the depression thing, man, whew. There's nothing I'm going to say that I guess anyone that's listening to this hasn't already heard about that. But yeah, that's the big doozy stage. I mean, I don't really have much to stretch up on that, but I do know that it is probably the most significant problem in our functioning society in America, in our infrastructure. And this brings us to the next stage, which is bargaining. This is when you struggle to find meaning, reaching out to others, telling one story. So now you're essentially filtering and processing the previous 3 stages of grief into some sort of ground footing so you can continue living your life. During this stage is where a lot of people either lose faith or gain faith in something. And as much as I harp on religion, and I'm definitely not a religious person, but I understand why people have it in their lives because of this. This helps, I think, a lot of people. It really does. And I can't sit there and say that thing that you do that works is terrible and it's nonsensical and all this stuff and hurt their feelings about it. And I don't think anyone else should. When I was younger, I might have been very angry towards that kind of thing, and it helps. So, that's, if anything, religion has provided a strong tool for people who are suffering through stages of grief in any aspect of your life. So that is very, very important stuff. So you reach out. This is when you come out of the cocoon. When you break yourself out of the isolation and you try to reconnect, and you basically are trying to filter, like I said, this is the filtering stage, everything that you've been thinking about, every emotion, every action. And this is where, again, given our social fabric, this is so important, how this has became more of a struggle, The thing is a lot of people can't possibly relate to your personal circumstances, and you try your best. And I think that's one thing that people should learn how to do, is try to figure out a way to articulate what you're really going through, for them to understand. And again, this is where like music and comedy and writing and whatever the case may be comes into play. Those tools are brilliant for the bargaining stage here. And yeah, and that's where it's basically it. You're getting to that point where you're going to be able to filter all this out and see where you're at. And at some point in our society, there will be this bargaining stage, and I think that's where it would be actually more peaceful and less violent and all that stuff. Yeah, the bargaining stage, it's not as complex as the other 3, but this one, I think, is the step towards, obviously, acceptance, which is the last one. But yeah, bargaining is probably the least complex, but it's definitely something that people should find any way they can to filter this out and to work on it and then figure out where you're at in this whole life thing. And there's just a few things I think people in this life, at this current stage where we're at, that we're just going to have to accept and try to approach the problems a little differently. And one of them, of course, as I've always said, is the drug thing, the addiction thing. It's a very hard and complex subject for some to tackle. But you have to accept that you're surrounded by, there's going to be situations where 90% of the people you're surrounded by are functional addicts. Not just functional alcoholics, functional addicts in general. So that's one thing you have to accept. Another thing you have to accept right now is pretty much because of the isolation that people experience and how they use social media as a crutch to get over social or societal hang-ups. A lot of people have been engaging and indulging in straight up lies, just for, lying, deceptive up to a degree that is almost absurd. But, I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that have not accepted any of that either. Because not only are you being bullshitted, toyed around, pretty much poked and prodded by every goddamn marketing study that's ever existed through the internet. And, back in the day, whatever the day you want, pre-internet, there was just radio, television, magazines, and or just, radio, television, printed media. And then your street people. But now there's still that, and then there's also the internet, which encompasses all of that, what was left over. So you have to accept that most things you hear and a lot of things you may see is bullshit. Straight up, like unfiltered, raw bullshit. That's another thing you're going to have to accept in today's American society, or perhaps globally. Another thing you have to accept, too, back to the holiday thing, is most holidays are bullshit. I think that as you get older and become an adult, they really don't mean shit. As an adult, holidays is another reminder of the things that were great in your life at some point, if you do have these memories. Like I said, it's guilt. It's pitching heat, as they say in the sales field. And they want you to still spend money on stuff. It's exploiting a vulnerable side of human nature. You don't need holidays every year to tell your mom or your dad that you love them and you care about them. You don't need a fucking holiday to tell your significant other that you love them and you care about them. So basically, on this model of those three holidays, of course, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, in no particular order, because, fuck it. By their order, they're saying it's only acceptable for once a year to really show that you give a fuck to whoever. And what does that say? Are we really in these frigid, awkward relationships with every motherfucker that's in our lives? Has it always been that way? I mean, it's cute. I get it, man. I mean, I like to have fun too. Everyone likes to get, whatever to participate and have fun. Really, as an adult, this is about loss. You just lose. Kids love this shit because they don't understand it yet. They're still innocent. And I'm not here to be the fucking Debbie Downer to be like they shouldn't. I'm just saying it really is kind of fucked up once you think about it. Once you think about it, every one of these holidays, it's sad. And that would drive people into the medicine cabinet, or it'll drive people back on the fucking wagon. It just happens. This is the time for that to happen, is the holidays. And I guess another thing you have to accept in today's world is, of course, political leanings. It's just, as much as we all want them to work out and to say and to show that it doesn't do much any good. It just ain't working. Sorry. We're getting garbage from every direction. Nothing's really changing, So that's another acceptance thing. You know, I was talking about the grieving stages and how we actually are experiencing grieving stages not only with the loss of loved ones and people we care about, it's other things we lose, whether it's control of your money, your job, relationship, your dog, your cat, your car, you know, all that stuff, all those sub categories is the grieving stage, which I personally believe that we are living in a societal regression that gives us the illusion of progression because of technology, which we can all safely admit adheres to our addictive nature, because that's really what's happening. Is they have exposed, by they, I don't know who the fuck you want to say, it could be anyone, but I'm just saying, exploited a vulnerable part, again, of our brains, our human nature, which is addictive patterns. We're addicted to little dopamine releases we get from the notifications, all that shit. It's all scientifically proven or whatever the fuck. You can Google it, make your own decision. I know for a fact because I have one of these goddamn phones and I know what it's like. Yes, I speak from experience. And so can everyone else. They can admit it. So, you know, facing the problem, I guess that's part of that 12-step bullshit. Now there's like, once you cut yourself out, you become a minority of sorts, where now it's just a, you know, a talking point of other people that have cut themselves out of that situation, and maybe they're not such great people, but just this sheer relief of realizing you're not the only one, blah blah blah. So yeah, we have to accept that we're all fucking addicts, completely, totally, 120 fucking % addicts. Whether it's a fucking needle, the bottle, or the fucking phone. It's a fact. So we have to face it and accept it. So what I think is happening on a grand scale is our species, I guess you can say, mainly in these, we can say, first world or sophisticated civilizations, we're actually experiencing a massive loss of community. And with that massive loss of community becomes isolation, depression, and anxiety. And for someone like me who's already dealt with depression and anxiety, and still does, quite obviously, it doesn't do me any good to realize that I'm left up to my own mind. You know, there's no, like, I don't know. I can't really describe it. There's not really a safe route that Google Maps can give you to route you through your mind. It's just, it's a different beast altogether. So acceptance, one of the stages of grief. And it sounds, to the people listening to this, I'm sure it just reconfirms, again, Alan's just a negative bastard. Probably he's just basing these things off some loose face value and a bias, a cognitive bias towards stuff. But what do you guys think? Like, what do you really think? What don't worry about the safe thing to say, but what do you really think? And if you think, and I'm not expecting you to agree with every fucking little bullet point here I've mentioned, or, you know, talking point, but I'm just saying there is something going on with us humans, Americans, Kentuckians, Muhlenbergans. There is some serious shit going on with us, man, and I don't know what the fuck is going to happen in the future, and I don't know how we're going to solve them. We can make small, teeny tiny baby steps, but before we're in the third baby step, we'll probably be in our 60s, and that's what bugs me, is the time thing. This age is a fleeting fucking thing, and we're just gonna, which is another thing that a lot of people can't accept, but I'm just saying, acceptance. And if you're a person who's been listening to this podcast, or has been, you know, through, you know, from the beginning to the end and stuff, obviously, especially with when I do these compilations, that the moods are shifting, the tone is shifting and stuff like that, because that's just me. It's me sorting through my thoughts and emotions and all that shit as a way of therapy. This is basically a one-sided conversation. I'm speaking into a device, and it's converting it to information. I'm throwing it out there, and I guess since I haven't had any real threats or any kind of, maybe I'm doing something right, I don't know. That's the problem. That was the main problem with the band thing. When I broke away and did the Escape the Rain stuff, I didn't really get. We didn't really. I mean, the crowds and stuff would be into it and all that, but I never really got messages until way after the fact. About, oh, we really liked your band and what happened and all that stuff, and I think it's great that people are into it and all that, but that feedback, that response stuff, I'm telling you, people, is the most important shit, period. That's sometimes, like, there might be a band or something to that effect that you're like, oh wow, whatever happened to that person, they were really good. I can tell you right now, outside of the obvious, like with money and stuff, it had a lot to do with lack of confidence. And I'm telling you, especially with dudes, when you kick the confidence down the road, it's over, period. And I've probably said that 1,000 times, but it's everything. If you don't have any confidence, like, all right, here recently, man, there was a house party where over at Dick Gray Sr.'s house, and we was playing. Dick Gray and Kevin and Justin, and I was supposed to play, man. But I'm telling you, man, like, I have never played an entire set by myself, and I had a set worked out, everything was all timed out. But dude, I have anxiety, and then when you can combine just a simple anxiety, and no alcohol amount is going to fix it. And even if I did, it'd be to the point where I'll be slurring all over the place and my lyrics are stupid, and I'll stop and just go into a rant about something that no one really is interested in. And drunk people shit. So, like, all right, so yeah, that's me, man. Like, I went from having like 3 or 4 other people with me, which I'm telling you is way fucking better than, as far as for the nerves and the anxiety, than just to be by yourself and everyone just staring at you, waiting for you to do stuff and to say stuff, and then everything is completely under deep analysis. Even with the party, people all fucked up or whatever. So yeah, I have stage fright, guys. I don't care if who knows it, but it's a fact. It's something I have to deal with. But the interesting thing is, if I'm doing something like this, and I don't know why, it doesn't really bother me. Well, if I was up there with the sole purpose of making people laugh or whatever the fuck, different. There's something that's happened to music and me. Me and music are having an odd relationship. I can sit and produce songs just by myself, doing the step-by-step process with the software and the guitar and the drum machines and synths and stuff like that. No problem. Because when it comes to vocals, which is the only way, it's the only reason why I could ever hold a note, is because of the constant repetition of take after take after take after take after take. Because guess what? Shit doesn't come natural to me. I really had to work at this shit, so I take a lot of pride in it when it does work, and that's why, it inflates the ego and all that shit. But, that's something you have to take into account. That's me now, and that's a battle I'm facing. Like, what am I going to do now creatively? Because I'm getting older. I've been doing it for so long. There's obviously no financial incentive. I don't have a band. It's just me and Casey, and there's distance between me and Casey. So yeah, it just kind of creates a problem, or some sort of stress level, some sort of anxiety level. But that's me. That's what I really, honest to goodness, will deal with. Because you got to ask yourself, would you do it? By yourself? Some people got bigger balls than I do in that aspect. Maybe whatever. I don't care. I don't care to admit that anxiety in some aspect rules my fucking life. And I've never really gotten any kind of medication for it, because there was a period of time when I was under the impression that I had it under control because I had people around me and all that stuff. I had girlfriends. And of course, more or less, as you get older in retrospect, you know, there were toxic people enabling you in the worst kind of way, because it's kind of false. You know, maybe that's what contributes to the fact that people don't want to shower you with compliments or stuff like that about your music or your live performances and shit. But that's a deep, honest to God reality for me, and it's something I'm trying to figure out. Do I keep doing this shit? You know, obviously I have to do it for myself, but really the whole point of it is to inspire other people and to get people to think, and and the feedback, you know, feed fucking back, y'all. And I think there's some cultural issues involved that have limited the response and feedback, because generally, especially when you think of the internet, most feedback is just trolling, like 80% trolling, and amidst all that is legitimate comments and stuff, and some people look at them, some don't, but it's a lot of just, you know, back and forth of, you know, fuck your mom and insert whatever here, offensive thing here, trolling and memes, you know, whatever. So yeah, it's me adjusting to that. I'm an old person, I guess. I just don't understand it. But yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep compiling shit and see what pops up. Something I've been trying to work out here lately is my understanding of the female gender. I mean, I can sit here and I can rant and all this stuff, thinking I have it figured out. And obviously I don't. No one really does, because everyone's, you know, got their individual thing. And so what I've been trying to relearn how I can trust the female gender, and to bring it back to a point where I can be more, I don't know. Because, you know, after someone gets, like, run through the shitter from a relationship, now some people immediately are on a rebound and, you know, jump from relationship to relationship. I'm telling you, after the last two that I've experienced, I, of course, didn't really give any time between the two. I absolutely am in no hurry whatsoever to do it again. And at my age, you know, the whole fucking dating rituals and stuff, you just don't do, man. I'm 34. This is about, like, we're in marriage or engagement, family life territory now. So there isn't just the simple shit. And of course, there's dudes out there like,
dude, you just gotta learn how to play the game and all that stuff. And all this, like, no, you know,
I kind of value, you know, just this freedom. Like, the shit I'm doing right now, I already hear the arguments about all this crap, because people don't really take into account how much you have to kind of give up for somebody in order for things to work correctly and to be fair, because that's what you want, is a fair thing. You want it to work out. And I think that sometimes people need to have distance and to let things breathe in order to appreciate each other. Because sometimes, well, hell, most of the time, you're going to end up just burning yourself out on somebody. And people don't take that into account. And sometimes it's sad to see otherwise really good people on their own get together and they ruin each other in the span of 6 months. But it's because, you know, you got to factor in everything. Sometimes you look at your job or your career as a break period. There's that constant struggle trying to find time to spend with each other. You know, the common dilemma is we don't see each other anymore. Or, why don't you get out of the house? We're spending too much time together. We don't live in a world where there's an in-between all that shit anymore. There's just not, because if you're not full-blown, full tilt in the workforce, you're not doing shit, really. You know, that's a fact. I mean, it's just, there's an economic structure that really is putting people in positions that are beyond human. Let's just be honest here. This shit is just ridiculous. And then, you know, a couple podcasts back, I was talking about automation and how some people will welcome that with open arms for obvious reasons. So anyway, I'm trying to learn how to do all this shit again, because I kind of want to gauge where I'm at. You know, because some people say, oh shit, you know, I think I've been single for too long. For me, I'm like, you know, I'm slow on that, man. I'm just really a late bloomer in a lot of ways, and just I'm a turtle. Slow and steady wins the race type motherfucker. That's me. But there's other things where I'm just fucking just not patient with, man. That's another thing too. Age and patience, man, are two very interesting elements. You know, god damn, yeah. It's thing is with me, man. I do not want to put up a front, and I do not fucking want to play games, man. Honesty, sincerely, is what I expect, and this is where I get in trouble, because that is a tall fucking order. Because honesty in our kind of climate and our culture is a no-go. You have to be able to present it to where you're, because you don't want to, inherently, we don't really want to cause a scene or create a problem or an argument or a confrontation. But you have to, when it comes to shit like knowing what you want, you have to be upfront. Especially if you're adults, don't be playing these games of, you know, hard to get and, you know, psychological manipulations and all this subtle sociopathic horse shit. You know, just really, as adults, cut the bullshit, man. Again, these are some fucking tall orders. These are just unreasonable demands. These are high expectations. Because I believe a lot of relationships that are based entirely on these very false pretenses, like guys that are nerds, straight up nerds, otherwise just joyful, excited, enthusiastic, optimistic nerds about whatever. All of a sudden, if they smell a girl's perfume in the room, they're just, you know, a whole lot like the chemistry between Thor and Star-Lord in the Avengers Infinity War. There you go. There's a nerd stuff within when Chris Pratt's like, I'm speaking deeper, you know, to impress, because Gamora was there. So anyway, there's so much of that, it's ridiculous. And now girls do the same thing too. So cut that shit out. You have to be you. That's the reason why people end up attracting like the lowest common denominators, or end up in these really shitty relationships for like, even for a couple weeks. First things first. Cut the goddamn bullshit. That's me. And see, that's my high standard. You know, you can be whatever the fuck you want to be. Just be you first. I mean, most importantly. I mean, you can play it up. You can do the best of the thing that you are. Don't fucking set up this whole personality change. You know, because that's sociopathic behavior. That's nasty shit. You know, so you don't want to go there. And I've realized it's like, through this process of trying to understand females a little bit better, I've realized too, admittedly, hands down, men are fucking, wow, dude. We're also just some of the most goofy, nasty motherfuckers in the world. You know, there's so many of us men that are fuck boundaries, you know, hitting on people's girlfriends, like fiancés and wives, like straight up. Just, and of course with Facebook, that's social media. It's definitely Instagram. There's so many of these motherfuckers. They get really thirsty, you know. But unfortunately, there's an aspect of that where women enjoy that, you know. And I was talking about how men have to have their confidence. Men also are like that too, man. They just like but we handle these issues differently. So there's that. That's the reason why I think social media is really bad as far as real deal, formal goddamn relationships. So we have to take that also, off the list. Cut the false pretenses especially in front of people, and definitely on the fucking internet. Again, this is my unreasonable demands and high expectations, right? Even though it goes without saying. So what does that say about everything else? Is it me, or is it everyone else that's crazy, or is it just the fact that there's just these cultural fucking negatives that we're letting run over everything that would be otherwise okay? At least okay, not great, but okay. Yeah, I smoke too much. Yeah, I know smoking's a turnoff. I'm gonna work on that eventually, but hey, I'm a smoker, so that's another thing, I guess, and yeah, I'm gonna get into another issue too that will probably make me remain single for a long time, but I'm fine with that. I've came to this, not a pity party. This might be something a lot of people already know, but I'm gonna let people in on a little secret about why a lot of people really dread going to family dinners and family outings, or Christmas, Thanksgiving holiday, is the small talk machine. You don't see it, but it's there. Topic A. So, how is work? Okay, topic B. Are you seeing anyone? Topic C. Children. These are the cliche topics that are brung up amongst people that that you're supposed to be close to, or maybe then you realize somewhere down the line that you don't really know each other. You just don't. It's hard to really be yourself at these supposed family functions. So there's times where I don't have the answer they're looking for to those following topics. So I end up doing shit like this, or maybe just being honest and blunt, because you're going to get the same reoccurring questions. Let me first start off with the kid thing. I enjoy all my friends' kids because they're hilarious and they're fun. Of course, I don't have any energy to keep up with, playing with them and stuff like that, and people in my family and their kids and all that. And I have experience with the grind of being a parent, and I'm telling you, I do not know. That's another thing. It's really superhuman to me, and I guess it's part of our instincts. Shit's amazing. But I'm definitely, most certainly going to take my time with the kid thing. And here we go. Now, if you listen closely, you can hear a million vaginas drying up in unison. But it's a fact. And if men were more honest, they would probably tell you the truth too. They're not kid-oriented. It's just not. They're not. Genetically, they're not. It's a learned ability. Much like a lot of things and structures in our culture, it's a learned thing. Like birthday parties and other rituals that are just not part of any other thing in nature. It's something we learn. So now we get down to the brutal genetic side of humans. So, and there's so many reasons. There's so many different schools of thought with children. Me personally, and many fucking others, there's a lot of stuff about ourselves we haven't figured out, and we're not going to learn them by creating another life. It just doesn't work. But somehow in our genetic code, some people believe that is what you have to do to have meaning in your life. And I understand it, but I don't agree with it. I don't think it's logical. I think it's a bad place to start. So we have to get to the reality of the children thing for a second. Okay? We have to. we don't all have to be super fucking pessimistic, but most of us can all agree that the world is absolutely a batshit fucking burning shitball of shit on top of shit and fucking burning and whatever words I can come up with here. But we all know that now, especially with as much information as we have access to and what we can comprehend. The world is crazy. So I think it takes a certain criteria of people to reproduce successfully, because there's so many things you have to take into account. And now I talked about earlier about how you got to learn how to live with somebody in the first place. You got to adjust to that. You have to adjust to your personal space, all that shit, time, managing time. Okay, that's just with another person, your mate, your wife, whatever the fuck. Then you have another one, another life that for 18 to 21 years, you're legally obligated to be responsible for. That's a heavy fucking thing. Big time. People don't realize, again, the gravity of that situation, because it's based off what? Impulsive behavior. Now, here we go with how shitty men can be. And see, a lot of shitty men, behind a lot of shitty men is some shitty woman enabling the shitty man. And then you have the overbearing male personality on the softer, more passive feminine personality and all that stuff like that. Because men are guided by sex. Just release, pleasure, orgasm, fucking. That's why we work. That's why the houses are built. That's why anything is done is so much like a bird doing a dance in front of the female bird. It's to get your attention, because we want the females to be comfortable enough so we can fuck them and they get a baby. We get an orgasm. And the love in the family life that luckily if you've been brought up right, isn't too hard to learn. But for the most part, for most men, it is a learned ability to adjust to that shit, because it's genetics. We're fighting against 1,000-year-old genetics that at one way or another guides everything. We have to be real about it. You know, I can sit there and just like, well, you know, I'm just telling you, it's just, I know. So we have to look at that hardcore and be honest about it, okay? So that's why people are going to have to learn how to be selective about who they're fucking around with. And you have to restrain yourself. Much like people restrain themselves every day from beating the shit out of somebody, we have to start limiting and being more selective about who we spend our time with and who we fuck. Period. Again, I wish I had a banner that you could see that says high expectations / tall fucking orders, because it's not happening anytime soon. Okay? We like to say that shit. I'd say that's the thing. I guess it's where the my confusion is. I hear it. Everyone's been hearing it. I just want a plain, honest person. Tell me what is what. No, you don't really, because you wouldn't be able to handle any of that shit. The first person that ever you run into that is honest or whatever, you're going to say, well, what was up with the smart ass? Or why is he being so negative? So there's all these interesting arguments people have against people that are trying to be honest without trying to hurt your goddamn feelings. But it's just a fact. You're adults, because after a while, you know, what are you going to keep doing? Lying? Are you going to keep accepting and perpetuating bullshit until you're dead? No, that shouldn't be any human's fucking thing, but that's 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to run into, you know. The kid thing needs to be thought through. The sex thing has to be fucking thought through. And it takes, again, it's a learned skill for men to be selective. And women, you have to understand that just because your ovaries are pushing for babies doesn't necessarily mean, and the psychological thing tied to that, does not mean the first thing you need to do to solve your fucking emotional problems is to go get knocked up. And there's this aspect too of people that I run into, and many people run into, that we know for a goddamn fact that they're garbage people. A weird hybrid of human species, half fucking litter, the other is garbage, and then human. That for some reason, when they get knocked up, holy shit, everything's just off the charts now. It's forgiven. We struck it off the record that you're this person, but you're knocked up, and all the crap, and they get all kinds of attention, the baby showers and shit like that, and it's not really for her per se, it's for the child. But come on, like I hear stories about late term abortions that are just so fucking horrifying, that someone, essentially was enjoying the baby parade but didn't want to follow through with it. That's some fucking weird shit to me. That's an insecurity level that is far beyond anything I've could understand. So these are aspects that are some deep fucking issues, and it's not really that deep. It wouldn't seem so deep if we just spent a little bit more time, like, 3 minutes a day on thinking about really, come on, the reality of it. The kid thing is number one. So that thing, of course, you got to get that off the table. So already isolated a good portion of every female I'm going to run into if they knew this. And then you have the marriage thing. That's because I don't want to offend people I know they're married, but do you really have to prove commitment, to bring the law into it, to split property up, to spend a bunch of money on a wedding, to have all your friends and family and shit to come over to watch you, wear a dress, because it's for women. The wedding thing is also for women. I don't think men are like, I can't wait to be surrounded by a bunch of flowers and wear an expensive suit or renting blah, blah, blah. It's a female thing. It's about the girls, man. That's why men put up with it and we do it. Men will do anything. You know what I'm saying? And I don't have to finish that sentence. Men will do anything. And we have proven that time and time again. So during this analysis, the more you look into it, you start realizing it's like, God damn, is this species just detrimental to itself? And I believe that. I mentioned that shit before, how we're kind of on a social level and on a physical level, we became our own apex predator because of the nature of how we got out of the food chain, like I said. So the harsh truth about men and women, or any kind of type of fucking relationship you can think of, is based off orgasm. A comfortable place for orgasm to happen, and a comfortable place to raise a child. Period. Trying to do so with as less confrontation as possible. But as we all know, some people have no selective bone in their fucking body, and thus creates a feedback loop of misery. And that's why a lot of people are miserable. That's why there's teenagers and people in their early 20s that are sticking a fucking needle in their arm. So that's why you have to think about the cultural thing. And a lot of shit that happens in schools or whatever, it's never the parents. It's never the parents. It's everything else. But. So I should probably title this podcast, Alan Orange Remains Single for the Rest of His Life. But hey, man, I just think there's something intriguing about being honest about this kind of thing. And I think a lot of people have. They just don't want to. They don't want to really confront it and they might have some good counter arguments. The thing is, despite all this stuff, if you're going to have, the reason why it's important to learn how to live with someone, and if you're going to have a child, that's very important, because this is about a family structure. The family structure is proven to work. And you do have to do it in that way. You have to have two authority figures in that house that can hold it together, at least because of how things are. The energy, the time, the commitments to and responsibilities, and you have to have a team. You have to have a squad, man, in order to pull this thing off. Because as we all know, we've seen the suffrage of what happens in broken homes and people that are orphaned and all that shit. We know how fucked up that is. And also, there's an aspect about being living with people that stayed together. Their parents stayed together. Sometimes people who have stayed together fight to stay together, and those fights can get fucking nasty, and that's another reality. So there's these moments, you just have to decide what path will lead you towards that kind of disappointment or that kind of anger and all that stuff. You just have to figure that out. But the first thing, obviously, is you have to have an honest leg to stand on. And this is not an excuse to be awful to fucking people and hurt their feelings for no good goddamn reason. When it comes to shit as important as starting a family or whatever, or entering someone else's life or vice versa, cut the goddamn bullshit. Get real. Stop relying so heavily on technology to thrust you into the right frame of mind in order to pull that kind of shit off. Please. The reason why I like doing this podcast thing is there's no way in fucking hell I would have been able to really pull that kind of shit off in music without it being awful. So it's just, this is without as much subtext. There's no metaphor. There's no fucking puzzle for you to solve. I'm just giving you raw information. Raw as fuck. Also, when it comes to, appearances, like fucking hygiene, I'm sure someone who works at a health department, without giving out names, and can tell you some fucking horror stories about how fucking shitty hygiene is and how it creates these unknown bacterial infections. So it's another thing about sex you have to consider. So hygiene, motherfuckers. Women, men, be selective. That, I put it this way, if you're dating somebody who's all former partners can fit in a school bus in every seat, in 3 at a time in each seat, it's about time you need to make some different decisions in your life. And the person with the said fucking school bus full of people they fucked also has some problems too. And this also feeds into the addiction narrative that I've talked about all the time, because everyone is a fucking addict, bar none. That's what that Blowfly Signal song, dopamine, serotonin is all about, and that's what that intro is about. Is everyone has something they're fucking addictive to that gives you those serotonin and dopamine releases and oxytocin releases and stuff like that. So the judgments are really just on semantics and splitting hairs, really. But I don't like the hard drug shit. I think it's irrational shit. It makes people irrational. It's fucking sad. But it's still no different than the sugar and the caffeine, the nicotine, the sex drive, the food, all that shit. It's the same fucking thing. It's just some are easier to deal with. We accept certain shitty behavior for reasons I don't understand, like gambling and all that stuff, sexual deviance and stuff. I mentioned that shit before. Even if I end up just talking to my goddamn self, I'm getting this thing out here. There's got to be at least one or two or maybe a half of some of y'all that are listening to this and like, damn, all right. Of course, my arguments don't come from any kind of formal education or formal anything, so therefore, I guess my opinion doesn't matter, and I curse. I say dirty words, so therefore, or profanity, so people don't take me seriously, and that's fine. If you don't want to take me seriously, it's okay. But if you're going to be upset about a sound that came out of my fucking mouth, then there might be something wrong with you. Just fucking saying. 21st century human beings, and we're still stuck in this fucking weird ass primitive tribe building shit. I can't be the only person on this planet or in my general vicinity that is kind of just like, you know, I think there should be a safe space, man, to be open about this kind of shit. And that's what I'm trying to encourage. I'm trying to encourage people, if anyone takes this shit seriously that I'm saying enough, you should take what I'm saying very seriously. I think I'm coming from places of experiences. I'm not going to sit there and just give you like detail after detail to make you believe the things that I'm saying have weight to them or real. And of course, I don't blame you if you don't take, do your own thing. But I'm just saying, I think that's the root of a lot of problems we're seeing today, whether it's from the left or the right side of the political spectrum or the fucking whatever, religious or non-religious. There's all common ground and common mistakes we're all making at an epic fucking level. This experience of trying to talk to girls again on a platonic level, just to relate non-sexually and to learn, it's something I hadn't really done since I was like 14, during those weird times. And I think it's healthy, but I think also, to be fair, there's only a certain amount of people out of the 7.1 billion that are able to do that. And it's a slippery slope. And also, when it comes to relationships, I don't advise people to actively seek out platonic relationships with the opposite sex. I just don't. I don't know. I guess that does depend on who you're with. I guess that, to be fair, it's a circumstantial thing. But the social media, again, I guess I'm going to keep bitching about that probably till I'm 90,000 years old or whatever exaggerated number I come up with for comedic effect. Because it does perpetuate the bullshit thing, the bullshit narrative that I was mentioning earlier. And it encourages otherwise reprehensible behavior. I mean, it's like Casey would tell me, it's like being in complete darkness and just whipping out your junk just because no one can see it. But it's there, and it's for your own, humor or whatever reason it would be. But as gross as that sounds, I mean, it's just that carte blanche to be dickheads. It's the internet. We're so fascinated, and we have more fun with that safety net, the distance, to be awful to each other and definitely rude. Over the last couple of years, there's been this rash of these celebrities and moguls, getting busted for being perverts. And some of these stories are a little bullshitty, and then some of them are just like, yeah, that makes sense. Like the Weinstein thing, obviously. The Weinstein thing was very obvious, and I think and that's just one dude. I can't imagine, like, right now I'm sure they're streamlining all that stuff, but he can't be the only one, and I'm sure that it gets into even weirder and more disgusting fucking territory. But I've had conversations with people, women, that have also had some very fucking awful shit happen to them, man, and it affects their worldview substantially, and no doubt, and their view on men and how they react towards men in relationships, or platonic or non-platonic, or whatever the case may be. I think equally, like I said, men and women equally have their shit, and we deal with it differently. And it's in different areas of our lives that we have to deal with shit. Men have a problem with bottling up their emotions. Men might have innovated the beer bottling concept and the liquor bottling and stuff. We bottle up shit like it is nobody's business. And emotions was the first one. Because typically what happens with, especially with the alphas, they hold back, and remain silent on some touchy issue, and eventually some situation, whether it's a fucking road rage incident or fucking someone at Walmart or McDonald's, all of a sudden they're beating the goddamn shit out of somebody with a baseball bat, or setting shit on fire, kicking people. But that's what you get when you've been beat over the head by this barbaric shit. That no, you better not. And I'm not saying men should be constantly bawling all the time. I'm just saying, shit, if something hits you a certain way or whatever, just fucking, yeah. There's that whole judgment issue of you're not man enough, and this goes again, men and women who both perpetuate that, because there's women who are very attracted genetically. Obviously, they want that alpha dude. They want the tough guy that can handle the shit. And in reality, we can, but I can speak from experience, man. Like I've embarrassed myself so much. I'm almost used to it, but it's all shit I did basically on my own, and I learned from it. And although it's not a recommended method to learn, but I've learned from that shit. It's if someone had the greatest embarrassments on DVD, the shit is fucking like a slapstick comedy. It really is. I've I've done a lot of just weak ass shit, man. It's just the way it is. A lot of dudes do. They just act all hard about it, like, yeah, I don't know. And they, make up shit. They, been around dudes that were some of the worst compulsive liars I've ever seen. And if psychiatry would have a field day with these type of people, man, given that this is at a young age, but man, they would lie about stuff that there's no reason to lie about. And there's no possible way that would be true. And this wasn't being done for comedic effect. This is people dead serious. Like, I'm having a party at my house. X amount of girls and dudes are coming by. And you show up, and it's just you and the other mutual friend there, and the first question is, so what are we doing? It's like, oh God, here we go. But that's just a thing. So life is basically problem solving, marriage, death, taxes. It's not really that thrilling, and it's something that it's again perpetual, and consent is definitely the thing there. We concede to the shitty stuff that is in our human life cycles. We do. There's oppressive things in capitalism or any kind of ism or whatever, and there's oppressive nature with money, but we do it. Watching a lot of comic book movies, and I, here lately, and there's that scene where in the first Avengers film where Loki makes everyone kneel, and just by presenting himself in that fashion, everyone just starts kneeling, and he does that monologue about, you were born to be led. And I just thought that was an interesting aspect, and he was correct in that aspect, But, so yeah, participation is the name of the game, and as long as people participate in things that are otherwise we know that are awful, that's why it's going to keep going until it's just a bunch of people in an office just shrugging their shoulders like, what else can we possibly do with these people? So we have to take it upon ourselves to embrace creativity in some form or fashion, whether it's podcasting, painting, arts, crafts, anything, making memes, doodling on a piece of paper, whatever the case may be. Just embrace that. I think creativity is what's going to get us out of this. Truly. You have to have a sense of community, and you have to have creativity, and you have to have the energy, the will. And if you don't, that's fine. If that's the thing, it's like if people don't want to fucking work, if they don't want to do anything, we can have our judgments, whether it's the same thing with like people who are on hard drugs. If they're not interfering in your life in any way, don't fucking worry about it, and don't be throwing stones at them, from your little glass house or whatever the fuck. It's a little stupid. It's a waste of breath. I mean, they're not in your way. What's the problem? Yeah, the judgment thing, the shame, especially you live in small communities. You could stub your toe and everybody knows about it. You don't even, before you can even go, fuck my toe, everybody knows about it already. And surely to God, it's because you didn't go to the right church or you didn't ask someone nicely for a job a couple summers ago. That's why you got your toe stubbed. Just irrational fucking shit that makes no sense. Not even in science fiction. But that's small town life, everybody. That's just how it is. And then you have like websites like Topics. I'm sure some of y'all are very aware. That is the asshole / armpit / gaping infected wound of the internet is Topics. So you would think, oh, it's a good place, it's a good source. It has unintentional entertainment value. Yeah. Everybody needs their confidence. Friends need to do a little bit more to help in that department if they have time. Don't be afraid. Don't falsely build people up. Give them honest to God credit where it's due. Me, I'm generally a negative person, but I'm trying to find that common, or not common, but that positive place. And I'm telling you, I think it does root in confidence, and you have to, the friends you do have and family that you do have that you see, like, and you know, just build them up, support them, don't let them slip, because at the end of the day, we're all going to get old, we're going to need each other, man. There's just no way around that shit. I can sit there and just be like, I'm fine with just me and my dog and my hobbies and thoughts, but that's bullshit. Everyone needs somebody in some form of fashion. Just don't do it in a way that is insincere and sociopathic / psychopathic in nature. It's sad that I even have to say that, but given today's culture, on a micro or macro level, yes, it has to be said. A thing I did notice, or I have noticed, since I've eased my ass into my 30s, is it's very difficult to get people to laugh. And sometimes you have to really dig deep, you know, to find something. There's always going to be something that will make someone laugh. It's just, you just don't really know. It's like that episode of The Office where Jim keeps putting meatballs in Stanley's, or in Dwight's drawer. And Stanley just fucking erupts in laughter, and, you know, Jim cuts to the talking head where Jim's like, I finally found something that made Stanley laugh. That's interesting, and I think that's very, very useful to understand, or to have there in your mind, that everyone has, it's sometimes it is strange, but, you know, there's certain lines and stuff you don't want to obviously cross, but man, is it tough. Like, I have friends that are tough to crack, like really tough, and sometimes I'll have to go really into things that are basically personalized. I will make personalized jokes, routines specifically for them, just to see if I can get them to laugh, and that's an accomplishment, almost like writing music, but for some reason, this comedy bullshit is natural. Like, it's just a natural, or just being a smartass, or whatever you want to call it, mouthy, or whatever. It came very obviously natural to me, it seems like. Believe it or not, considering I'm like, I freeze up in a lot of social situations, and I'm just a nervous wreck, and just, you know, all around, I can make things awkward, I guess, just by just being there. Body language and shifty shit. I don't know. It doesn't mean I have any killer instinct or any of that bullshit. I'm just bad at this stuff, and I use humor to deal with it. And, you know, that's why I don't like in situations where all of a sudden everyone gets really quiet and they start looking at their phone. That moment everyone goes on their phone. I like to break the ice with something, man. So you have to be creative, and I think that's a challenge, and I think it's an indicator not only of adulthood, but it's just the state of the affairs of this world, this life now in America, or potentially the world. I don't know. People are very uptight now because obviously no one wants to go out of their way to offend people and hurt their feelings, but at the same time, it's like if you spend all your life trying to please everybody, you end up not pleasing yourself and dying unhappy or losing on an unhappy scale. And I think that's very bad. And that's a trend that's been going on here lately, I guess, in entertainment. And I obviously do not follow that stuff. I like to be cordial and reasonable, though, but I don't want to be constantly worried about, oh, shit, this thing that was totally not what it was supposed to be and blah, 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 offending the person. You can't be that way. Just don't even go, So, and I'm sure people, if you're listening to this right now, find somebody, like on your friends list or something that you had, come up with something ridiculous. Don't hit them up with the usual small talk there on the messenger. Come up with an interesting question. Like I asked a friend of mine, Jay, not too long ago, if you were a professional wrestler, what would your gimmick be? Or just, it seems childish, but it's creative, and it does kind of make you stand out in a way, if that's what you want to do, amongst the horse shit of sin nudes and here's a meme picture. So, come up with stuff. Ask people questions like, what if Coca-Cola and Disney got together and bought the moon? Or maybe they should legalize like farting in a jar in Australia so we can pay off the national debt. Just come up with some shit, man. Just be creative, be colorful, or not. Be bland, be deadpan. I like to do these no laugh things, those challenges you see on YouTube. It's kind of fun to bring up stuff that, like, you have, movies from certain actors that most people would like, no, I don't want to say a Jack Black movie. But all right, well, you sit here and you watch this clip, and then if you laugh, you lose. Or Will Ferrell, whoever, do that stuff. Bomb them on it, Holy hell, I think that is actually our thing. Humans, we are creative. And I think that is our number one trait. I think it's over everything. Number one, our creativity is almost perfection. Even in the smallest shit we take for granted, whether it's the home or the fact that someone came up with a pencil. That creativity, that ingenuity, innovation, evolution, that shit, we master that shit. But, that's one of the things amidst all the other crap like tribal wars and bloodshed and horrible shit. But we do so creatively. That's the thing. That's the difference between us and a wildebeest or a tiger. We do it very creatively, and we have to work at it. The thing is, with other things in nature, it comes natural. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, we do kind of seem unnatural, and we have to work at all these things. And I think, thankfully, we have enough brain power to do it.